I don't think that's a correct caricature because I don't think that most insurance adjusters are going out there to try to rip anybody off. They're just doing their job and they're going through as best they possibly can but they may be employed by some insurance companies that have a better reputation and an inclination to make full payment. And some insurance companies aren't. They just aren't that way. They're going to nickel and dime you all the way across. So to just say it's fair for everybody, that's just not true. So what I typically do is tell people, Rory or Jason, if you happen to have a loss and you got wiped out and the insurance company adjuster is coming, the first thing you can do is make it easy for them. And what I mean by, if you do have the photographs or a video of what it looked like before, and now you got the photographs of what it looks like after, where you provide it to them, and you start providing them information that they need to get back. Or are you mitigating the loss? If you already had a contractor come in and start cleaning up right after the storm, and what those costs are right away. So you can provide them all the paperwork and information that they're going to be looking for. And it's really, it's pretty common sense to do so. Typically, I find most of the people that never have to come see me are working very closely with their insurance adjuster, providing them all this information, providing them the contracts, providing them the photographs, the videotape, and things like that right away, so they can get their job done. And again, for most insurance adjusters out in the field, a closed claim is a good claim. So the more that you can provide to them and make their job easier, typically the faster things, move along. But that's not always the case. And in the larger claims and the more complicated claims, unfortunately, there are typically more disputes.
All right. This episode of the Real Estate Law Podcast, we are talking about natural disasters and what to do when they strike, and insurance, and what happens when your insurance company doesn't pay out as it should. Rory, we know a lot about homeowners insurance these days after a massive claim that we had at one of our properties this year.
Yeah, I mean, we were incredibly fortunate that claim actually went our way. That's in part because, I give you credit. You went out and you shopped for the right policy that made sense for our exact situation. And you just disclosed everything to the insurance company correctly. And that paid off in the end when it came time for us to file a claim. But I must admit, I don't, we know a good amount about insurance claims and how to deal with insurance just from our own experience, but we don't really know the ins and outs. So it's time we brought on an expert to really let us know how to deal with insurance.
Yeah, what I do know is that having good insurance is a lot of peace of mind. It allows us to sleep easier and have confidence that we can kind of move forward. And granted, the claim, which we'll get into in a little bit on this podcast, the claim had nothing to do with a hurricane or an earthquake or a natural disaster that's hitting. But our guest, who's been dubbed by the media as the master of disaster and the Babe Ruth of hurricane lawyers, who do we have here? Chip Merlin from the Merlin Law Group. Chip's coming up to us from Tampa. He's done a lot of work around the country. He was doing a lot of work in New Jersey for Superstorm Sandy. Maybe there's the Yankees reference right there. Then again, the Yankees train in Tampa too. So there's a lot of Yankee fans in your part of the country. Welcome, Chip. I don't know if you're one of them.
Yeah, I actually am. I started reading the newspaper every day, the baseball box scores. So
yeah,
absolutely.
Man, that was my childhood. I mean, I grew up in the 80s outside New York City, and I would just study those box scores. Those were the bad years of the Yankees. It was a big stretch in the 80s and early 90s that there was just nothing going on with that team. But, they got things together once they had Jeter, Posada, and all those guys in the mid-90s, and they had a great run. Excuse me. So Chip, tell us a little bit about the work that you've done helping out policyholders and folks fight these insurance companies that maybe aren't paying out after like a really mega disaster that's happened, such as Superstorm Sandy from a couple of years ago.
Yeah, my entire practice, when I first got out of law school, I represented property insurance carriers for almost 3 years. And then I switched in 1985 and started representing policyholders, and our practice has grown to just primarily being in Florida to being all over the United States. Our firm now has over 50 attorneys, and we've been involved in typically any major disaster that goes on for, the last decade or so across the country. I was appointed the coverage counsel for the Champlain Towers that fell down a few years ago down in Surfside for the class of victims that actually, suffered from that. And as you indicated, Superstorm Sandy, but certainly Hurricane Katrina, all the hurricanes we have down here, you name it. Lava flows out in Hawaii, earthquakes that you would never think that might happen in Oklahoma, North Carolina, even not just California. The wildfires that have been going on in Colorado and California we're involved in. But our firm primarily deals with individuals, companies, as well as municipalities that have insurance claims and insurance disputes after some type of catastrophe, whether it be isolated or widespread catastrophe that might happen. And unfortunately, there's a number of things that can happen that if you talk to real estate attorneys, the real estate attorneys can help prevent these problems from ever coming up and reaching my doorstep. So I'm looking forward to chatting with you guys today.
I mean, can I just kick off with just a really tiny technical question? You're talking about serving in all these different parts of the country. How is it that you're able to practice in all these different states?
I've got 14 bar licenses just myself. And I had to take New Jersey is one of those states you can't practice there without taking the bar examination. Florida and California were the same way. When I took the Mississippi bar, it kind of opened me up to a number of other states that have reciprocity. And then through the other attorneys in our firm, because we have 12 different offices, we cover most of the United States all over. So, on a daily basis, just giving, my position within the firm now, I'm looking at losses literally from one corner of the country to the next. And that's how we go about doing it.
Sounds like you must spend all your time in continuing ed classes and just dealing with all the different bar registrations.
That goes through. And one of the tricks is, though, and I don't know if you've looked into it, is when you start getting on the speaker circuit, you can also get, continuing legal education that way from helping train other attorneys and stuff. But it is something to, keep up with. But we do have a national practice all over. It's a pretty small niche field. So most of the fundamentals of the insurance law really are pretty close from state to state. They have certain nuances that you have to always be aware of. The biggest issue has to do with the local, litigation procedures that you have to learn, and sometimes making certain you have a local attorney. And sometimes just going down to Sebring, Florida, which is only 85 miles from here. Sometimes it's good to have an attorney even that's local that knows the judge there too as well. So, I think that's the biggest issue with respect to most of. Once you start practicing one little area of the law like we do, and know more and more about one smaller area, and the next thing is the procedure, which does significantly vary from state to state.
So why don't we take people through what happens when a disaster strikes, and people that are listening to this, it might have happened to you or it might happen in the future. But from the point of, hey, a storm is coming, to, oh my God, my possessions are underwater, or what do I do? It's a very harrowing process for a homeowner for a variety of reasons. You're displaced, or your tenant is displaced, your possessions are ruined. There's just lots of bad things that could happen along the way. It's going to be a lot of time out of your day for many, many weeks and months afterward, and it could be a financial strain for you. Some of these disasters, they happen at the blink of an eye, like an earthquake, a fire. Sometimes you have a little bit of time to plan if you see a hurricane coming. But, you just kind of never know. And there could just be like a flash storm, like, here where we live, we had a 4-hour driving huge rain event last summer that ended up, leaving us with 3 inches of water in our basement. Wasn't a hurricane, wasn't one of those events that you see on the news and there's wall-to-wall coverage, but, still that kind of thing happens. So what do you recommend, Chip, when people can plan ahead and they know that a bad thing is about to happen? What are some steps that people can take to protect themselves during those first few days? And then after the event's done, what do you do next?
Hey, Jason, that's a great question. So let's take your scenario. And typically that might be a hurricane that usually has the greatest chance for everybody to take a look at. Sometimes, it's flood, but that's rare. Most of the time it's a hurricane. It's the one that people have a few days to take some precautions. And one of the first things to do is to think about the property and what you can do to protect it. That's both real property and the personal property that you might have. And I also think at the same time, people should be, do I really want to be here? And I typically tell everybody, especially for a hurricane, if you're anywhere close to where the water is going to come, and the water, a half mile from the coast, a half mile from a river that might overflow, are you in an area that's inundated from the water? Because unfortunately, my experience has been, most of the death, most of people getting stuck in really bad places have to do with the flood and the storm surge that comes along with the water and not leaving in time, so that when it gets down to the last day, they think they can leave or so, and everything is completely packed. Everybody's sitting on the road, not going anywhere. And, I think Hurricane Katrina, Mississippi was probably the worst of that. I had friends that I'd known since I was a small kid that had, when I first saw them afterwards, so a week later, had all their skin on the inside of their arms just ripped off because they were holding on to trees. They had to leave their homes and things. You don't think about that until you get into those areas. So the first thing I tell everybody is, you have a plan to leave. In Florida, sometimes leaving to go to Orlando is not going to do it because you still have the hurricane anyway, buckling down on you. And you never know exactly which way to go. You might as well leave and go to Montana or something like that, take a few days. But getting away from the water is extraordinarily important. In terms of the home for the few days, afterwards, it's sometimes just battening down the hatches and getting ready, if you are going to leave, make certain that you take your possessions that really mean something, and especially your insurance policy. Unfortunately, I think for most people, whether you're an investor, a homeowner, a business owner, whether you're an owner of real estate, the time to take care of those issues is long before anything happens. And the truth of the matter is, most of the stuff that does you never expect it. Jason, you and Rory are going to sit down there. Nobody buys insurance expecting to have to use the product. And I think that's the most important thing, so that when, something does happen, it usually is an emotional shock to you. Oh my God, what just happened? And you hear it, you might be there, you might not, but then, there are a lot of financial consequences. Your life's turned upside down for a period of time, and you go back through to try to fix everything. So I while I tell people, hey, go harden your home, harden your businesses. In the last few days, there's not a lot that you really can do. That's quite frank about it. I think building a home or a structure that might be safe to a hurricane with hurricane straps, all that is months in advance. But if the floodwaters are going to hit you, they're going to go through. If a fire is going to hit you, it's going to go through, and there's not a lot you can do right there, then at that time. The best thing is to plan in advance. It's coming, get away from it, be safe, and then come back and pick up afterwards.
Yeah, it's probably worth documenting things beforehand also, like having, photos and videos, and just to kind of show what was there, just in case it's no longer there.
You're teaching me, but absolutely, if you do have that opportunity to do so, it helps. And it's really easy to do, because everybody just pick up your camera and just go around. And, I've literally seen people do, the last thing they do before they leave is go around the inside, of the home and do so. And while I tell everybody you should do that everywhere, every time anyway, most people never do, even though it only takes maybe about a total of 10 minutes to go through your, open up all the cabinets, see, all the various things you've got. In the event you are completely wiped out, and I mean, this is from a fire or whatever might happen, there's nothing left. United Policyholders has a great, go to United Policyholders, just Google it. They have a great list of all the stuff that you might own that helps refresh your memory for a little bit when the insurance company comes and it's time to fill out all those forms about everything you've got. Mm-hmm. But it does help to have the video.
Now, when it comes time to make the insurance claim after the disaster, we have this caricature in our head about these insurance companies that are just trying to cheat you, rip you off, and give you as little as possible and drag it out as long as possible. I guess, is that a correct caricature? And then what can we do to get off on the right foot when we first submit the claim with the insurance company?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think that's a correct caricature because I don't think that most insurance adjusters are going out there to try to rip anybody off. They're just doing their job and they're going through as best they possibly can but they may be employed by some insurance companies that have a better reputation and an inclination to make full payment. And some insurance companies aren't. They just aren't that way. They're going to nickel and dime you all the way across. So to just say it's fair for everybody, that's just not true. So what I typically do is tell people, Rory or Jason, if you happen to have a loss and you got wiped out and the insurance company adjuster is coming, the first thing you can do is make it easy for them. And what I mean by, if you do have the photographs or a video of what it looked like before, and now you got the photographs of what it looks like after, where you provide it to them, and you start providing them information that they need to get back. Or are you mitigating the loss? If you already had a contractor come in and start cleaning up right after the storm, and what those costs are right away. So you can provide them all the paperwork and information that they're going to be looking for. And it's really, it's pretty common sense if you do so. Typically, I find most of the people that never have to come see me are working very closely with their insurance adjuster, providing them all this information, providing them the contracts, providing them the photographs, the videotape, and things like that right away, so they can get their job done. And again, for most insurance adjusters out in the field, a closed claim is a good claim. So the more that you can provide to them and make their job easier, typically the faster things, move along. But that's not always the case. And in the larger claims and the more complicated claims, unfortunately, there are typically more disputes.
So, Rory, I think we were good customers in the eyes of our insurance company. Like we could talk a little bit about this, and Chip, you can kind of chime in with what we did correctly and did incorrectly. And just to speak up for the insurance company, which I can't believe that I'm actually saying that because people don't normally do that, but we actually had a very good experience with our carrier. We work with Proper Insurance. They're a little more expensive. The premiums are more expensive, but we have 5 policies with them for 5 of our properties that we use for short-term rentals. Since we're the homeowner, it's a homeowner's policy that also covers short-term rentals and issues that might happen when you do that. And that's what this company specializes in. So it's not like we have our regular homeowner's policy and we happen to be doing some Airbnb on the side and we're kind of keeping it quiet. Like we went right to the source and we said, we're going to pay a higher premium just in case something happens. And sure enough, $130,000 claim happened. This was, a situation where a guest had left on a faucet during a power outage and they stopped the sink up and they checked out on departure. And when they left, they forgot to shut the faucet, but they didn't see any water running out of it because, the well was off because the power was off. Sure enough, when the power came back on, the water came back on and the entire place got flooded. We got a call at 2:30 in the morning from the fire department that our neighbors thought our house was on fire because there was hot water causing condensation everywhere and steam was coming off the house when it was cold outside. So, we hustled, we worked with our builder. We had lots of photos and video evidence. We did mitigate that day. Rory went up there and met with ServPro within hours, and we started demoing later on that day. And, the insurance company couldn't have been more buttoned up in the process. We worked with the adjuster. We were kind to everybody. I think that helps, right? I mean, Chip, these people are humans. When you meet an adjuster, it's always nice to be nice to the adjuster, right?
So we're a litigation firm. You don't have to be aggressive and you don't have to be a bully to get your way. As a matter of fact, many people will act the opposite. You're being too aggressive and being a bully. And it's just easier for those that want to get along. Use a lot of emotional intelligence. It's what we talk about, and try to get along with people. It typically works out in the long way much better for you than to do the other. Don't project that the other person's out there trying to rip you off. I really do believe most insurance adjusters that I've met in the field and at various conferences really want to do the right thing. Some of them want to do the right thing, even if they got company mandates that are telling them to pay less. So, I think it helps. What you did is a great example of what I was talking about, providing them the information, making things move along. And also, it seems you bought good insurance. I mean, I often tell people the first thing, especially if you're a real estate investor and you have numerous properties, your number one thing you want to be looking for is a great insurance agent. And that's somebody who's not going to sell you the cheapest insurance, because how cheap is insurance when it doesn't pay? And guys, y'all just gave me an example. There's a lot of companies that have exclusions on the policy for water damage that you would never have gotten paid for that under many policies. And so trying to look for the broadest form of coverage, especially for one where tenants, not just for tenant intentional vandalism, things like that might be covered, but also for the tenant's accidental things that they do, make certain that you're covered is extraordinarily important. So, I wrote that book, Pay Up, Avoiding a Disaster with Your Own Insurance Company. And one of the first lessons is for everybody, go get a great insurance agent, because I'm more affluent, you're more successful, you're going to have more property, more investments, and it's really important to have those buttoned up with the right types of coverage in the event if something like just happened to you did. Because suppose they said, well, whoops, we have this exclusion under the policy. We only pay for water damage in the event, of a disaster which first strikes the outside of the home and allows water to come in. That's not what happened to you. Instead, your tenant just left it on, so we don't cover that water damage. And there's a lot of policies out there that's exactly what they say. So your agent gave you a policy that had broad coverage and covered this particular act. And I think when you are talking with an agent, you want to make certain that it's an agent that's knowledgeable with respect to the type of business you're doing, the type of real estate investment that it is, and you're seeking the broadest coverage with the best, carrier. And sometimes that's going to cost you a bit more.
Yeah. Which it did in this situation. And I'm sure that there's examples that you have of insurance companies that have higher premiums that still, use tactics to underpay or delay or deny, legitimate coverage. But that all probably happens to the whole gamut of insurance companies, the ones that are the low cost carriers, the, higher premium carriers. When an insurance company is doing that, when there is a delay tactic involved, like what are they doing on their side and how can you overcome that?
Yeah. The first thing though, Jason, I will say this, and Rory, is most of the time the smaller premiums are often for a reason, and it's because you're getting lesser coverage. If you think about insurance as being a product where they're all competing against each other, you can change the product and the buyer never knows about it. You guys never read your insurance policy. I guarantee you, nobody reads their insurance policy before a loss happens. It's after it happens, you go, oh my God, I hope I'm covered. I hope everything's going to go well. You're praying to God, everything's going to good. That's when you start to read the policy. So again, get the great agent, to begin with. I did want to correct that. That will often mean you're going to pay a little bit more to get that better coverage, because that's what drives everything. There's a lot of policies out there, unfortunately, today that are Swiss cheese policies. You're getting a great rate because you're getting a lot less insurance to begin with. I mean, that I forgot what your question was.
What are the companies doing when they choose to underpay or delay payout of a claim? And I'm guessing that happens in all levels of insurance companies, but maybe it happens a little bit more with those Swiss cheese policy companies. Where someone's needing to get, because we got paid out on schedule, on time. I didn't have any issues with when I was receiving checks or anything. There was no pushback. There was no negotiation. Maybe I should have negotiated, but frankly, my builder was able to work within the confines of what they paid out. So I'm not looking to make money on this. I don't need to pocket 50 grand. I just want my place back.
And I think that's what most people are looking for. Unfortunately, I really do believe that's the way most things go. Of course, in my practice, I only hear the horror stories that come out. And that's usually from, delayed payments, underpayments, and for some reason where there's some really ambiguity that's going on in the insurance coverage. So you can only do so much beforehand. You can go out and buy the best policy in the world, but you have circumstances that happen that the insurance company is going to say, well, wait a minute, we have a problem here. And it's a multitude of things that can happen. I always tell people, the larger the loss is, you certainly want to be keeping track of everybody that you're dealing with, not just for you, but for the insurance company, who the name of the contractors, their contact information, all that, and keep a chronological log of everything that's happening. And that way you know exactly what it was. I talked to this guy at this date. This is what he told me, and this is what's going to go on. And especially with the insurance adjuster, what they did. So you can keep track of all those things. Not to say that there is going to be a problem, but in the event that there there becomes one, at least you've got a history and a chronology, about what happened. And then I think you want to be in a very polite way, but very, very pointed. Look, what's the issue with respect to, me not getting my money, and not just with a telephone call, but a follow-up email, a letter. Certainly if you're an attorney, it helps out, I think, a little bit more than you're not just to walk away from something you feel that you're being wrong, because we've been, taught that before. Our clients, especially going through this, I think, they've got to make certain everybody is fulfilling what the promise is, and that there's follow-up going through. It's good to meet you this day. Very polite response in the email indicated this. I'm going to be getting this for you in response to this, just to go through. But if there's not that, you've got to stand up and say, hey, in a very polite, what is going on? I expect the money. When can I expect the money to come in? Unfortunately, I mean, we've had situations where some insurance companies literally ghost policyholder. I mean, nothing comes back for 30 days. And the contractor is calling saying, where's my money? What's up with your insurance company, and the whole bit? And you go, like what's happened then? For those types of, situations, sometimes getting in touch with the state insurance department can be very helpful, depending upon what state you're in. Some of the larger states have huge departments that with great consumer advocates are protecting people. And they call up right to the insurance company. Next thing you know, things change around right away. There's no need to see an attorney. Unfortunately, some of the delays are coming about because the adjuster found something out there that might be a problem, and trying to get to the issue of what the problem is right away, and then what you're going to do, because like in your instance, everything was getting paid for. The contractor saying I could work easy, but after the contractor comes back and says, we got a problem, he's telling me that the name of I'm going to make it up, the name of the entity that you insured it with is not the right entity. You insured it as Jason. How do you say your last name, Jason? I'm sorry.
Muth.
Jason Muth. But it's really the Jason Muth Family Trust when they check the title that owns the investment. And so now you got a problem, on the app, both on the application as well as the insurance policy, because we got the wrong name down there. I mean, it could be just that. As you're going. And so, trying to find out what the issue is extraordinarily important too. And you got to stand up for yourself on that. And then sometimes, actually, unfortunately, you have to go see counsel when you get some real legal issues that might go that way. Mm-hmm. So, again, working with somebody, keeping a chronology, standing up for yourself. I always tell people the first thing is go to the Department of Insurance. Most of the time, if it's just an issue that they're just not responding quickly enough, they're usually pretty good about getting a response back from the insurance company on that, because that's one of the things they look for when they do market conduct studies of insurance companies, the amount of complaints they get about claim delay, which is probably the worst, not responding back to the claimant afterwards. That is more common, I find, in mass disasters than what it is in a single, incident. In mass disasters, there's not enough insurance adjusters to go around. And so they're sending adjusters in from all over the country. And typically what's happening is that adjuster who came in, who saw you to begin with, is now left. And the new one that is coming over is inundated with hundreds of claims and is not getting to yours in particular. And so you might go for a period of 2 or 3 weeks and can't get through to anybody as you're going through this revolving door of adjusters coming in and out from all over the country to take care of you. So, again, keeping a chronology, what everybody says is really important, because you can tell the other adjuster, you can show everybody exactly where you are on this. And unfortunately, the problem is too, the data, the information give the one adjuster after a mass disaster, that person leaves and somehow it magically gets lost. You would think it never would in this day and age, but it does. So keeping a copy of all that's important as well.
So that's good advice for dealing with the process as we go through. But I mean, I know you specialize in dealing with the disputes and the difficult cases. When should somebody reach out to you and engage your counsel? Even if when you start the process, you don't know there's going to be a dispute necessarily, but when should somebody pick up the phone and give you a call?
Yeah. I just gave you one example. They come back and say, we got a problem under the policy. As soon as they say it might not be covered, they say there's a problem. It sounds like, oh my God, you got to be kidding. that's typically a good time to call an attorney just to get some advice. And a lot of times I'll tell people what to do, and you don't need me yet, but at least, what the issue might be and what you can ask for, coming back. And it's not just me you might give a phone call. If you're not able to handle the extent of the loss, there are other people out there known as public adjusters for a property loss that come out and help for an amount. They will do everything for you and typically get a lot more that they recover that's even above your fee, because most people don't understand the full amount of benefits that might be available under your insurance policy. And most people don't know how to put together a lost business income claim. How do you go about doing something like that? They don't know that there's coverage for extra expenses, so that if you have a fire and your tenant has to move out, you can literally take your tenant, go rent another place, put your tenant in there for that period of time, and move the tenant then back if you got extra expense coverage. And public adjusters sometimes can help out very quickly for less than what an attorney can do to help on that. And that's what they specialize in. So the larger the loss, sometimes for property damage, I'll actually tell people to go see a public adjuster to help out. Especially if have me, I'm flying all over the country. If my place got wiped out here, what would I do? I don't think I have somebody come in and help me out to go do it as well. If you're hands-on and you can do it, that's fine and dandy. But as soon as you hear there's a problem, Rory, that's the time to call an attorney, because typically the problem's not going to go away magically by itself. Okay, and there's certain things that can be done that'll help out if you go to somebody who's really good at what they do.
So this is how my crazy brain thinks in a situation like this, where, going back to the big claim that we had, a company that I kind of want to keep working with at all 5 of our properties. I think I have a good relationship, being that we have 5 policies with them, but now we have this big claim. During the claim, they actually sent me a renewal, which was not that much of an increase. So either their system didn't catch up or everything is copacetic. But, hiring a public adjuster, hiring an attorney, like at some point, is the insurance company going to look at you and say, this person's a problem, we're not going to work with them anymore, we're going to drop them if you want to work with this company going forward? Like, I didn't take a lot of those steps because I didn't feel like I needed to. I was trying to be a good customer, go along with, the process. And I think that we got a good result. But and I don't know if you know the answer to this, because it's probably a question for an insurance company, but, when some of these heavy hitters, the Babe Ruth of insurance companies gets involved, does the insurance company see the person that they're covering as a problem and they don't want to work with them in the future?
Jason, Rory, you might be a good customer to your insurance agent, but you're just a number to that insurance company. They don't know you good or bad or what's in your mind, and frankly, they don't care. They don't have any way to track that whatsoever. Okay, the book of profitability that your agent might have overall, not just with you, but with everybody else that's insured with the insurance company, might mean more than that. But that I've heard this before from other people. I'm a good insured. I'm a good policyholder. Like I don't want. They don't care. You're a number. They honestly don't know who you are, and they don't have any way of tracking it. And so I tell people, you got to get rid of that, notion right away. Some insurance companies it's pure statistics. And unfortunately, it's true. If you have one loss, for some reason, statistically, there's a chance that you have a greater chance of loss within the next 2 years. Some companies cancel you right away. But it's all on computers, and it's all based upon bets that they're taking. Certainly your selection of tenants who, in your particular case, who don't mess up the property, who don't have cause damage and things like that, that type of risk management that you do up front. Apartment complex owners that I represent, when I talk to their managers, what can you do to reduce the amount of losses that you do have? That counts, because it's dollar and cents of how profitable you are to them. But in the big scheme of things, there is no personal relationship that you have with your insurance company. It's just I know it's a feeling you want to have, but it just doesn't exist in reality. And there's no way an insurance company looks like that, and they can't track it. So everybody should stop thinking about that. If you have an insurance claim that's significant, you're supposed to be paid the full amount. there are some certain insurance companies out there that I write about because we don't sue them very often because they take care of people. Amica and Chubb typically do a pretty dadgum good job, especially on residential markets, with respect to that. But the bigger the claim, the tighter they're going to look at things. That's just the nature of the beast. And unfortunately, there's been, for one reason or another, the competition within the marketplace, the ability to be more discerning with respect to coverages and just what the insurance companies are putting down on their claims handlers out there. There's just been more disputes that have been coming up than ever before. And so, this is what I tell everybody. You have an insurance claim, go get what you're entitled to and be nice and do everything you possibly can to go good. Most of the time, things will go through just heavenly, okay? But if there's issues that come up, after the fact, you can't do much. You can't change the policy afterwards, all right? Mm-hmm. And I know nobody reads their policy beforehand. Nobody does. Even I who do this. Am I going to get to read every single word and see if they've changed something for 1 year? No way. We buy on the hope that our agents providing us the best coverage with great, and with insurance companies, they're more inclined to pay. That's really the best you can do. But I've heard this before. I don't want to get the full amount. I'm going to be good, so that way they don't cancel me. And people will give away $100,000 and more. I mean, I have the biggest problem with churches, as you could imagine. It's not right for us to go sue somebody. Well, really, what are you going to do about the $1 million that are out there? You're just going to walk away from it, or what? Maybe somebody here is not being, so holy about this, But I appreciate that, because in most transactions, especially service organizations we belong to, we want to have a relationship with our client. We're trying to be close. The whole nature of insurance is a large pool of similarly situated, risks that are out there. You might be one of 10,000. They don't know you. A computer might know you, but they don't know you. Okay.
Wow, that is a dose of reality right there, Rory. I even wrote them a good review afterward. I took a screenshot, sent it to my agent. So she likes me, right? We're good to go. But I'm just a number. I get it.
It's probably, it's not a bad thing to write to your agent that way if they treated you right. Don't get me wrong. If you got the right, and especially for the individuals that were out there, and to your agent, especially your agent, that relationship is probably the most important thing, because that agent's going to be the one that can go in the marketplace, try to get you the right coverage that you need, who's going to know more about you, because that's where the relationship is at. Mm-hmm. And so it's in my book, I talk about the need to get an agent that's going to come out, visit you, look at your properties, spend some time with you about where you are in your life, and to make certain that you have the full coverage, that you're really needed, and really understands your business. Or we'll have somebody in the office who does. So that's the important relationship to have, is the one with your agent, and get a great insurance agent. That is the number one key.
Well, despite the hard realities here, I am a big believer in karma, and what I give comes back to me. And I believe when I give like this, it comes back in other ways. So, hopefully that's the case. Rory, any final thoughts for Chip before we get to our last three questions?
Well, I do have a question from kind of a different perspective. As a real estate attorney who works in real estate closings, we often see the insurance as just one of the many things on the checklist to get us to closing. What are some things that you wish that we knew when we're doing our jobs to protect our clients, I guess both buyers and sellers?
When I sell, a lot of times people just get whatever insurance they can find, make sure the sale goes through. The truth of the matter is that policy can be just completely Swiss cheese policy as it goes through. I want to make certain that, for me, because these were claims always come up, that the name of the entity that is being named in the policy is the one that's the owner. And that somehow that owner is also back there. So when you represent, again, more affluent people, and you might put the name of whatever it is in a family trust, or John Smith owns a bicycle shop, and John Smith's Bicycle Shop, Inc. might not be the owner of the property. So John Smith's family property investments, who owns the property, needs to be on the policy. Probably John Smith's Bicycle Shop Inc. needs to be on the policy. There probably needs to be a lease now that you need to draw up between John Smith Property Investments, John Smith Bicycle Shop as well. It's not going to cover both risk. And this needs to be explained to, the insurance agent all at the time that the closing, is taking place. So that in the event the next day after this transaction happens, there is a fire that happens, that John Smith's Bicycle Shop Inc. is to be able to have a policy that can collect on all the lost inventory they've got, all their business interruption loss and things like that, and that there's not going to be some problem, between those two entities. I find that at the closing, if the real estate attorneys have a discussion with their clients about the need for them to come back, make sure their leases are up to date, the names are all right. Have they changed things around at all? Has the nature of their business changed? Almost the same things that should be asked by good insurance agents are also asked by your attorneys, that there's a lot less less problems for your clients, not just at the time of sale, but again, the next year afterwards and stuff like that as their circumstances change as well.
All right. Well, before we get to the final few questions, I do want to just say that this has been an enlightening conversation. I hope I didn't overshare too much about our experience with an insurance claim, but sometimes you just don't know what you don't know until it happens to you. And, you're in this field all day, every day. A lot of people that are listening to this, maybe they've never had a big claim. So maybe they're going to listen to it saying, I hope that never happens to me, or maybe they're going to listen to it saying, this just happened to me. What do I do? So we'll make sure that we put all of your links to your website and everything in the show notes. In this episode, you could say how people can get a hold of you in just a second, but why don't we do these final 3 questions we asked all of our guests just to get to know you a little bit better and wrap up the interview. First of which, Chip, if you can get on stage for half an hour and talk about any subject in the world with zero preparation, what would that be?
What I'm talking to you guys about right now, I do this day in, day out for a living, and I love what I do. To me, it's fun. I love to chat with other attorneys, especially who are in the very other areas, because if you're a divorce attorney, insurance comes in, somebody's going to move out of the house. Where are they going to go for the insurance? As soon as they move out, maybe their insurance doesn't apply anymore, to the situation, somebody dies and things like that. Even elder attorneys, all of a sudden, Pop moves out and it's got to go somewhere else. That affects insurance as well, because now the home is vacant, and even if they put Junior in there, he's not the insured. Pop, who's now at the nursing home, is. And so, what do you do to all these little things that go on in life you don't think about? If you have insurance policies, there is an effect. So when I speak with a lot of my colleagues who practice in other areas of law, insurance really involves all kinds of stuff. It even involves your law practices, guys, with cyber insurance right now. If somebody were to hack in there and ransom you, do you have insurance for that? And so those types of things that go on a day-to-day basis, I love to talk about with respect to this, and try to at least do the best I can about, hey, just spend a little bit. Nobody likes to think about insurance. It's a pain in the neck, but in day-to-day life, it affects everything we do, from our health to driving a car to the practice of our laws. So, again, if you ask me that question, I could talk about this all day long.
The bigger you get, the more you're a target. The more you're dealing with the public, the more you're dealing with customers. You need to have correct insurance. I shouldn't say proper. I'm not advocating just buying proper insurance from that company, because we actually work with them, but you need to have proper insurance policies. Let's say it that way, because this is not a paid endorsement. All right, second question. Tell us something that happened early in your life or career that impacts the way you're working today.
Oh, wow. Read about this. People always ask me, Chip, how'd you ever get into the practice of law? And I never intended to be an attorney. My father was in the Coast Guard, and I was going to go to I knew I was going to go to the University of Florida from the time I was a little kid, and we lived all over the country. But I'd gone to 3 different grade schools, and I had a friend of mine that was on the tennis team with me invited me to go blue fishing up in Chesapeake Bay, and we got down about 1.5 miles down the road, and an old man ran a stop sign and hit the station wagon that was in with his family, and we went to another lane and head on into a VW bus. And everybody else ended up getting attorneys, all this other kind of stuff. It was a horrible accident. And I still can't straighten on my left arm from it. And it made me, I feel like the only people that really knew where they stood afterwards were lawyers, because they could size things up, figure out what the rules were. And I've always felt that a little bit of empowerment. At least I know where I stand. I can research it. I know what the rules are. And it got me interested. And so in going to law school. And so since I immediately started at University of Florida rather than going studying business and stuff like that, which I got my undergraduate degree, and I knew I was going to go to law school right away. And so 7 years of schooling seemed like an awful lot. So I did my undergraduate as fast as I could, and then off to law school I go. And then I didn't know I was going to do this particular area of the law until I got a great offer and let me get out of the classroom, out of the library right away. And what I do for a living, a lot of it's flying all over the country, speaking to people about all kinds of things with very interesting, unfortunate, bad circumstances, catastrophes, and then trying to figure out what we can do with respect to insurance companies. So that's how I started doing this, and that's something that a lot of people don't know about.
Yeah. Rory, he certainly found his way into a recession-proof corner of the market, of the law market, hasn't he? With climate change and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, if anything, there's been a lot more natural disasters. That's very true, Jason.
Yeah, we'll probably be seeing a lot more of that also in years to come. Final question, tell us something you're listening to or watching or reading these days.
Yeah, I'm spending a lot of time on two different books right now, two different reasons. One's Multipliers. It's a book more about leadership and how you lead an organization and how things have changed about what leadership, is. And it dovetails a lot with another book that I'm reading and keep studying is Christopher Boss, Never Split the Difference. And Christopher Boss is, the reason why I say they're interrelated, both of them talk a lot about tactical empathy. I think, Jason, that's kind of what you really were talking about, getting along well with being very communicative. How do you look for win-win situations? And you look at life that way, as well as all your relationships. Typically, you do have good karma, but it's because of the way you approach life and you approach everybody else, the way you lead yourself, you help lead others to good results in that way. So I applaud you on that, and it's probably one of the reasons why you had a great result with your insurance claim. You also had good insurance.
Yeah. Let's hope it stays that way. Let's hope we never have to use them again, right? We kind of hope that this is something that I hope I never have to call you in a professional sense, Chip. We could certainly share more conversations on this podcast, but if I have to call you because I have a problem with the insurance company, then something bad has happened.
Well, I often say insurance is the craziest product in the world because we pay all this money for it, and it's not like an apple or orange where you look at it, you don't. You can't even look at it until after you buy it. And then when you get it, most people want to read through the umpteenth pages that you've got to really see what it covers and everything that's there. You just hope for peace of mind that it happens, and it's only after you have a loss that usually, fortunately, never happens to us. So the best thing could happen, the best loss is the one that doesn't happen to you. And you can only do that by being risk adverse. Again, if you're in the real estate field and stuff like that, making certain that your home is hardened the best you can, pick the best tenants you're invest with, people that really do take care of their property usually have less losses.
Well, I'll certainly be happy if for the rest of my life all I do is pay premiums to insurance companies and have no claims. But if you are in a situation where you're having a fight with your insurance company, or you don't understand, why you're being denied coverage, and you want to talk to Chip, how can people get a hold of you?
There's only one Chip Merlin, and there used to be another one. Unfortunately, that guy passed away. But if you put Google and put Chip Merlin, you'll get to me right away. Chip Merlin attorney. And if you do that, you'll see that we actually run a daily blog on property insurance that I probably write 90% of, and we've been writing it for over 15 years now. And if you ever have any issue on insurance, you go there, frankly, and just put the search terms in there, and most of the time we'll have a answer for you. Get pretty nerdy, to be quite frank with you. You've got to be a bit of a nerd to do insurance work like I do, but we're really easy to find. We're on the web, and we do try to help educate people as much as possible about it. So I really appreciate this today and the opportunity to help chat with you and help anybody out any way I can on this.
Of course. And we'll put links in the show notes if you don't feel like Googling Chip Merlin to find him easily. But if you Google Rory Gill, what will people find?
I wish I could just say I'm the only Rory Gill out there, but believe it or not, there are a few other Rory Gills running around out there that are doing some nice things. So maybe search for Rory Gill Attorney, or just look for my law practice, Urban Village Legal. That's urbanvillagelegal.com.
And would you believe there's another Jason Muth out there that's affiliated with the real estate world? A gentleman who I've spoken with, actually, because I get his emails every so often. So I decided to hunt him down and say, I think this one is an important email, and this is my name, and you have the same name as I do. So we had a bit of a laugh. Maybe we'll have him on the podcast someday, Rory. We should have another Jason Muth and talk about what it's like to have the same name. But if you want to get a hold of me, you can go to jasonmuth.com. I once again own that domain after I let it lapse and somebody squatted on it for a while. Another easy place to find us is realestatepodcast.com, where you can find all the past episodes. You can find links to our Spotify, iTunes, YouTube. We love 5-star reviews. We love all your comments. We read everything. And if you want to be a guest, you can fill out our form on that website, and we'll get you set up if we think it'll be a great interview like we've had with Chip today. Chip, thank you so much. We really appreciate all your insights. I wish you the best of luck in your travels across this great country, helping people like us get what we deserve when disaster hits.
Jason, Rory, it's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. And thank you for listening. And we'll see you in the next episode. See ya.